let's talk about the Always Sunny Season 13 premiere. The gang makes Paddy's great again. Of course, spoilers ahead. Quick recap of the episode first. So the season starts off by introducing us to a new member of the gang, Cindy. The gang under Mindy's leadership is able to pull off successful schemes, something that's always been pretty rare for them, since they tend to self-sabotage. Now, Cindy's latest plan involves shutting down a rival bar by inciting a protest between liberals and conservatives, thus forcing their customers to leave them and go to Paddy's. All seems to be working well until Mac introduces a lifelike sex doll that looks exactly like Dennis, which, of course, creeps everyone out. I mean, why wouldn't it? Look at that thing. It's awful. As the episode goes on, the gang's increasing obsession with Dennis and the Dennis sex doll leads to their downfall as they fall back into their old bad habits and sabotage what could have been a great scheme.
Guys, what is happening here? Everything is going so smoothly.
Yeah, it's nothing. It's fine.
No, it's nothing. We're doing good still. We're good. We're good.
Wait a second. This doesn't have anything to do with the doll, does it?
Mindy, at her wit's end, gives the gang an ultimatum. Either choose her and move forward without Dennis, or they can just stay obsessed with the doll. And then Dennis, literally out of nowhere, comes back to the bar. Cindy tries to get him to leave, but when she prompts the gang to choose between the two of them, the gang, of course, choose Dennis over Cindy.
Well, he did just get here, so let's not go crazy,
like seeing
right?
him.
She storms out and we get her golden god back, thus restoring the status quo at Paddy's. So what did I think about this episode? Overall, I actually quite liked it. I think for sure one great thing about this episode is that it shows how resistant the gang can be to change, even when said change is overwhelmingly positive. The gang are creatures of very bad habits, and the Dennis sex doll is a physical manifestation of the unhealthy behaviors that they repeat over and over again. But before I get into that whole spiel, I know that a lot of people had mixed feelings about this episode, which I totally understand. I've got a few mixed feelings as well, but I definitely don't think that the bad here outweighs the good. I've heard a lot of people say that the gang feels off and out of character, and honestly, I think that that was done on purpose. The gang that we see in this episode isn't a version of the gang that we're used to. The gang feels a little off here because without Dennis, their dynamic has changed. This episode shows how deeply the inner workings of the gang are affected by his absence. I like to think of their increasingly weird behavior in this episode as a result of the gang not being whole. This isn't the first time we've seen this sort of thing. They did it before and the gang misses the boat. I want to give the writers the benefit of the doubt and say that the slightly offbeat interactions of the characters is due to Dennis's long-term absence and not because of bad writing. This episode gives us a rare sight, a high-functioning version of the gang. Not only are they able to pull off successful schemes, but also Charlie is in a somewhat normal relationship with a waitress. Mac is finally the beefcake strongman that he's always wanted to be. And even Dee comes across as more confident, as the gang noticeably shits on her a lot less without Dennis there to egg them on.
Wow, Dee, you look great. Yeah, I hate to admit it, but this looks kind of working for you.
This episode makes it clear that with proper leadership, the gang can actually accomplish a lot. This all leads me to believe that the gang, as a collective, are technically better off without Dennis, and that he is one of the driving forces behind the gang's self-sabotage. He exacerbates all of their insecurities, and the Dennis sex doll is a way that his presence lords over the rest of the gang, making it difficult for them to move forward with Cindy. As soon as the sex doll comes into the picture, their plans start to fall apart again, as the gang is no longer able to concentrate on their present scheme and can only think about Dennis and what he would do or say if he was there with them. We see how the gang has internalized criticisms from Dennis, and even though they're all doing great without him, they aren't able to continue that positive change anymore because the doll has gotten into their heads.
Look, I know it's just a lifeless thing that Mac pumps his loads into, but it's in my head.
Even though Mac and T look great in this episode, the doll's disconcerting presence revives the insecurities they both have in their physical appearances.
It doesn't like what I'm wearing and it thinks I need more makeup.
Yeah, I can picture Dennis saying that to you right now.
It also thinks Mac looks fat.
Even though Frank had nailed his tuba playing, he can no longer do it with the doll staring at him, and even Charlie's relationship with the waitress suffers because of the doll. Overall, while I like this episode, I gotta say that my biggest issue with the episode is the ending. I really didn't think they would bring Dennis back so quickly, and when he returned, it really felt like they sort of just shoehorned him in at the last second. I'll be honest that the change was so sudden that I wasn't entirely convinced that that was actually Dennis at the end until the credits started rolling. Part of me was still thinking that the gang's dependency on Dennis ran so deep that they were completely unable to move on without him, and the Dennis we were seeing was just them talking to the Dennis sex doll. Something that they did a lot in this episode, actually.
What the hell are you guys talking about?
It called me a bird.
And I was kind of excited to see where the gang would go without Dennis involved. I was hoping that maybe the writers could further explore Dennis's role as a father in North Dakota. If anything, this episode left me with way more questions than it did answers. Where the heck are Mandy and Brian? Why is Dennis back at the bar with no explanation whatsoever? Did he abandon his child? It seems unlikely after Dennis's double life, when we got to see him, albeit briefly, form a connection with his son. A connection strong enough to make him leave Philly in the first place. It makes me wonder if there was even a point in removing Dennis, if he was just gonna come back so quickly. This is just me, but I have a feeling that Dennis isn't gonna be back for good just yet. Dennis himself even says at the end of this episode that he was back for now.
Well, welcome back. Yeah, well, for now.
Oh, I'm back for now.
Okay, so I'm gonna give this episode a B-. It's not the best, but far from the worst. Like I said before, the good here outweighs the bad by a long shot. And I have faith in the writers in RCG. They've rarely let me down in the past. Cricket's tail, Frank's brother. I still cannot wait for the rest of the season to air, and I have a feeling my questions will be answered in the upcoming episodes. Also, real quick, who else is just completely fucked up by the fact that the gang and canon have had an orgy together? I'll give them this. After 13 years, Always Sunny still definitely has a way of shocking me.